right? Because again, the listing itself, the photos, the virtual tour, the listing description, all of those things are designed to get you to visit the home, to get you to set up a showing, right? They're not necessarily designed to tell you the full story of that home. It's like a dating profile, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you all of my flaws and all the things that are maybe not that great about me. I'm going to put myself or paint myself in the best light possible to get the date, right? To get you to swipe in the right direction, right? And so look at Welcome to the Home Goals Podcast, the ultimate guide for turning your home goals into reality. I'm your host, Derek Thornton. Join us as we navigate the twists and turns of obtaining a home. We'll be offering expert tips, helping you avoid pitfalls, and championing your journey towards that cherished place to call home. In this week's episode, I wanted to take some time to talk about a topic that usually isn't well known to the public unless there's an issue or a problem that goes down. It's even something that many realtors and many real estate agents out there, this is something that we are often concerned about when we're going through transactions or deals, because it's something that can very easily end up impacting our license, putting us in real estate jail, and it's just a whole other list of consequences and things that are always kind of lurking behind every transaction or deal that we're involved with. And so I wanted to take some time to talk through that from a buyer's perspective, so that you all have an understanding of how this works and what all is involved, in ways that you can make sure that you even protect yourself. Obviously, your real estate agent is going to be there to protect you, or should be there to protect you as well, but you always want to make sure that you have an understanding of these things as well. And so topic I want to kind of dive into today is revolving around what we refer to as material facts. And it may sound like a legal term or something that's not that exciting, but again, this is something that has caused tremendous issues, or can cause tremendous issues in a deal or a transaction, revolving around what all the material facts are and how they are disclosed to the buyer. So material facts are basically just anything about that particular home or property or listing that's on there that is likely to be of importance to a potential buyer, right? So it's things that could impact their ability to be able to sell that property, things that could be wrong with the property itself, right? Like, is the foundation falling down? Is there a lien or some type of mortgage that they're going to be short and not really be able to pay at the closing table? Are there certain defects with the title that are going to keep them from being able to sell those homes? All of those things would be considered material facts and things that should be disclosed to a potential buyer. The problem that we often run into is that we have a very difficult time defining exactly what a material fact may or may not be. So every year, as a real estate agent, I have to take multiple classes, usually about 8 hours of continuing education classes I have to take to make sure that my license stays current. Split between two different classes. One of those classes is a continuing education, and that is one that is put on by the Real Estate Commission, and they usually go through kind of the hot topics or the things that they're seeing a lot in complaints from time to time. And material facts is always right up there at the top of the list of like one of the major things that they receive a lot of complaints about and are causing a lot of issues in transactions. And I always, just out of curiosity, I like to have a little fun with whoever may be the instructor for the class. But every single year I take that class, I always ask the instructor, what is your definition of a material fact, or what is your take on it? And to this day, I've been asking, going on 12 years now that I've had this, I've never gotten a straight answer of like, oh, well, this is exactly what it is, or this is what exactly is categorized as a material fact. It's always kind of like, well, it depends. Some cases this might be, but this isn't. We have a lot of times where some teachers will do a quiz at the class where they will run through a lot of real world scenarios and say, hey, is this a material fact? Is this something that needs to be disclosed or shared? And every single year there's questions that trip people up, and people are like, wait, what? Why is that not considered something that we would need to know? It's very confusing kind of going in there and trying to figure it out. And so one of the better ways for you to make sure that you protect yourself going into a deal or transaction is making sure that you are also doing all that you can to research and learn more about these properties as well, just to make sure that you're protected, right? Because you never want to be in a situation where you don't know what all may be disclosed about that property and if that's something that's going to be important to you. So just a few ways and a few tips of things that you can do to kind of help make sure you're put in the best position possible. One of the primary things that you can do right out of the gate is usually when a listing is posted in our MLS, there are what we call public remarks, so remarks that are available to everyone out there. Anyone can see them. These are the remarks that are distributed to all the other third-party sites, the Zillows, the Redfins, Realtor.com, all of those guys receive these updates or these remarks as well. And then there's what we have called private or agent remarks. These are things that are only viewable to other agents, right? So this is where we usually put a lot of the technical details that may not be accessible to the public, right? So if there's a situation there where I might want to say, hey, just so you know, this house was measured by a professional appraiser, or hey, just so you know, the refrigerator and the washer dryer set do convey with this sale, or there is a home warranty that is included in it, kind of this specific plan. And this is a lot of technical details that really don't line up with the fluff that you would typically see in a public remarks. Usually those public remarks, we're trying to like sell a story, right? We're talking about, oh, look at this beautiful bathroom and this lovely gourmet kitchen, and we're trying to really make sure that the buyer can envision themselves living in there. And it's hard to tell that story and also put in all of these technical details as well. And so usually we'll have a separate section that kind of gives a little bit more insight on that, and that's oftentimes a great source of information for you to find out some of those material facts, right? So for example, like if a property is partially in a flood zone, or there's something that's going on where, like, usually that will be told up front. Now, obviously, if you were just a buyer working without a realtor or without a real estate agent and you wanted to pursue a property or something like that, they should tell you these things as well. But again, there's no guarantee that someone will remember to do that, right? You don't have the representation. And so that's another advantage to using an agent in your corner when you're going through those deals, is that they have that ability to see that inside, that information that you wouldn't typically see. That's also, I'm going to make a quick segue too, but that's also why you need to be super careful when you are working with a for sale by owner, right? When you're working with somebody who is selling their home themselves without the use of an agent, because they are not typically bound by the same rules and restrictions. And a lot of times they don't even know the potential rules and restrictions that go into selling real estate. And so if you're working with a for sale by owner, you really need to be concerned about what all material facts may be, right? If I'm going on a listing appointment and I'm touring a house and I'm walking through the home with the seller and I notice that there is just a massive leak that's happening in the crawl space, right, where there's a pipe, maybe there's kind of got a steady drip or something like that, and it's caused all kinds of wood rot and damage and mold and stuff like that too. If I see that, or the seller tells me that, I then now become responsible for making sure that that is disclosed to every buyer out there. If it's not, then I am at risk of losing my license and livelihood, and well as my character as well in the process, right? I'm bound to be able to share that stuff. Even if the seller comes to me and says, hey, Derek, keep that between me and you, can't do it. My only option at that point is just to either remove myself from the situation or just refuse to do it and say, like, hey, we have to disclose this potential buyer. That is not always going to be the case when you're working with a for sale by owner. They're not going to, or a lot of times may not want to share that with you until after you've gone under contract, and now they're saying, hey, now that we got you, by the way, there just happens to be this leak under here, but we'll take care of it. And so you really need to make sure that you're careful when you're working with a sale by owner, and understanding that there may be a lot of hidden things or things that they may not be sharing with you, either intentionally or unintentionally, that a traditional agent would. Right, so just keep that in mind. But first thing, like I said, you want to look at those age remarks, see if there's anything in there that sticks out to you, any potential red flags that you might see in there. Second place you want to look is with the what we call, it's a residential property disclosure and owners association statement. It's basically a long form that our state has provided, and it's required to be filled out by every seller. And it basically goes through a ton of different questions, asking everything from how old is the roof, to what type of siding is on this home, to have there been any issues, are there any known issues with leaks in the home, right? It asks all those questions. It's about 7 pages of a document that has all kinds of questions on there. Some of them are fill in the blank, and the majority of them give the option to put either yes, no, or no representation. No representation means either I don't know or I care not to say. Right. So usually we'll see no representation checked across the board if it's somebody who is not lived in that house themselves. Right. So if it's an investor selling an investment property, they have not lived in that house, so they can't speak definitively to whether or not there is a leak in the home, or if there is issues or malfunction or defects with some of the appliances or systems in that house. And so they'll just check no representation across the board, and there's really nothing you can do for that, but like that kind of makes the disclosure almost pointless to the buyer at that point. But the other time you'll see it too is when there is a property that's been inherited, right? Maybe a family member passes away and someone inherits that home. They might check no representation across the board too, because again, they haven't lived in that home, so they wouldn't be likely to know. But usually if it's someone who has been living in that home, I'll tell those sellers, hey, do everything you can to answer those questions, yes or no, because you don't want to send out those red flags that you're trying to hide something, or really cause the buyer to be a little bit wary about what all is included on your disclosure statement. But that document can be a very, very helpful piece of content in helping you to understand a little bit more about the backstory of that home, right? Because again, the listing itself, the photos, the virtual tour, the listing description, all of those things are designed to get you to visit the home, to get you to set up a showing, right? They're not necessarily designed to tell you the full story of that home. It's like a dating profile, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you all of my flaws and all the things that are maybe not that great about me. I'm going to put myself or paint myself in the best light possible to get the date, right? To get you to swipe in the right direction, right? And so look at that way when you're looking at a listing, right? You're not looking at it in understanding or thinking that like, hey, everything that I see on this listing, the photos, the specs, all that stuff, that's not going to tell you the full story of that home. The property disclosure can help you, give you a little bit more insight into that property and some of the quote unquote warts that home may have, right? And so that's a great resource and a tool for you to use to learn a little bit more. And if a property goes under contract and that buyer has an inspection done, and for whatever reason the deal doesn't close, maybe they can't come to terms, or there's something that fell through with the financing on that home, that buyer still kind of discovered, I guess we should say, a lot of things that may or may not be wrong with that home. And if that home comes back on the market after that initial deal fell through, then it's oftentimes, unless they address or fix everything that they found wrong, the seller now needs to go back and change that property disclosure statement, right? So if you said up front, hey, there's no known presence of a leak in the house, and then you find that there is one in that inspection report, if you don't fix it, you don't have to fix it, but if you don't, you now have to go back and change that property disclosure statement. Or you have to do something even shadier and try and say like, hey, like, we'll see if we can kind of just put that aside, or whatever, just keep the same one and just disclose it out there, which can cause a multitude of issues. And so that property disclosure statement is going to be your next best guess, kind of get a little bit more background insight into that home. Is it in a flood zone? Is there any other kind of environmental factors or things that may impact this property? all things that you want to know and be able to find out. So we got the private and agent remarks. You got the property disclosure that you can look through as well. Another item that you can look to, this one you have to do a little bit more digging, but it is possible. But you can ask an insurance agent to provide a clue report. And basically what that is it's almost like a Carfax for a home in a sense, at least from insurance terms, right? And so just like a Carfax may explain to you like, hey, this car was in an accident in this year and kind of had these type of known reports and things that happen. A clue report will also tell you again, hey, were there any prior claims on this property or this home? Was there ever a fire in this home that damaged it and caused an insurance claim to be repaid, whatever? And if so, is that person explaining that or something like that too? And so you want to look to that to kind of give you some insight into if there were past issues or items that may have happened or gone down with that home from an insurance standpoint as well. You also need to pay attention to the fact too that you need to look to see when those events happened, if they did happen, and when that current owner purchased or owned the property, right? And so if the person who is selling it has owned it for 7 years and then you find an insurance claim from 9 years ago, obviously that was the person before them and they may not even disclose that to that potential buyer as well, right? So you can't always just assume that if there's anything on that report that this current owner is always going to be fully up to speed in what exactly happened with that property as well. But that's a great report that you can use to kind of get some more insight into like, hey, just to see, are there any red flags or things that happen? Now, granted, obviously, if there was an issue and they didn't go through insurance to address that item, it's not going to show up on that report. But that clue report can be an easy way for you to kind of learn a little bit more about that as well. The next thing is just a simple Google search, right? Like just looking through and seeing like, hey, has this address or property ever shown up in the news? Has there ever been any issues that have happened here? Did someone die here? Was there a shooting that took place that involved this house? Those are all things that you want to try to get a feel for and see if they happen, because it may not always be a material fact, right? You may assume, but if you say, hey, I want to go through and purchase this home, and then after you purchase it, you find out that someone died in the upstairs bedroom, and that kind of freaks you out and doesn't make you feel comfortable. And in many respects, that may not always be considered a material fact, especially if you didn't come right out and ask that up front. Like, hey, has anyone died in this home? That's going to be a problem for me. That's going to be something that is not what there are some people, as crazy as it may sound, there are some people out there who say, hey, I don't want to live in a haunted house, right? And so I want to make sure that this home isn't haunted. There are a lot of situations in other states and stuff that we've heard over the years where a house is kind of deemed haunted by the general community, and then someone purchases that home and then finds out, wait a minute, what, you sold me a haunted house? Like there was a ghost and stuff going through here, whatever. Like, it sounds funny, but again, that can be a huge issue. And again, if they didn't tell their agent that a haunted house was going to be a problem for them up front, that may not be considered a material fact or a thing that they needed to share. And so again, it's very important that you understand like kind of what all is going to be an issue for you, and make sure that you really disclose that to your agent, because that can definitely come up in the midst of things. And again, some things that you think may be material facts may not always be, right? And so just keep that in mind as you're going through that process and trying to learn more about that home. But see if it came up in news reports, if there's anything that happened, if there's any police reports or any public records that show this property being involved, because that's going to be one thing that happens as well. What often ends up happening is that people purchase the house, and then as soon as they move in, all the neighbors now want to come over and say, hey, man, I'm so glad you guys bought this house. You won't believe all the mess that happened after this, especially after the shooting. Like, wait, what shooting? And so you don't want to be in that situation, right, where you're finding all that after the fact, right? So we really want to make sure we're looking up those properties, trying to see if there's anything that has happened in the meantime, right? And so those are just some things that you can do behind the scenes to learn a little bit more insight about that property and get a little bit more. Don't be afraid to talk to the neighbors too, right? There's been a lot of times where we've been touring a house and the neighbor is heading out of the house to go run some errands, and we strike up a conversation with them, and in the process of talking with them, learn some things that we would have never found out had it not been for that conversation, right? Don't ever discount that option as well, too. And also, that's a wonderful time for you to understand, like, hey, is my neighbor crazy? I would love to know that before I move in, right? And so that's a wonderful opportunity for you to kind of build a rapport, get to know them as well, and learn more insight into that property, in that neighborhood, in that community. All of that is going to be helpful to you in any way possible. You almost have to think almost like an investigative journalist, where you're just trying to dig through all these different resources, do your research, talk to individuals, talk to people, learn more about areas, read different articles on what's happening in that community as well. And again, these are things too that your realtor should be up to speed on as well, but it's important for you to do your own research too, right? Your realtor at the end of the day is not going to be living in that home. You're the one that's going to be living there. You need to make sure that you fully understand and grasp everything there is to know about this home. So I hope that that's helpful for you all, and just kind of understanding like some different ways to kind of look at the property, look at the home, understand if there's anything about that property that may cause you not to go through that deal or with that sale. You want to know that up front, and that's really going to help you in the long run. And so if you ever have any questions about this or want to learn more about it, I'm always happy to talk more through this subject with you. But hope that that's helpful for you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I'll talk to you next week. Have a good one.